overhead fans in the briefing room did little to cut through the thick Afghan heat. Dust particles danced in shafts of sunlight streaming through reinforced windows, giving the forward operating base Alpha's operations center an almost dreamlike quality. But there was nothing dreamlike about the tension crackling through the air. Captain Jake "Hawkeye" Morrison sat in the back row, his flight suit still damp with sweat from that morning's close air support mission. Around him, the room buzzed with the controlled chaos of elite warriors preparing for something big. Navy SEALs clustered near the front, their casual confidence unmistakable. Army Rangers occupied the middle rows, weapons close at hand even here. Air Force personnel, drone operators, combat controllers, and a handful of pilots like himself filled in the gaps. Jake kept his head down, reviewing fuel consumption reports on a battered clipboard. To anyone watching, he was just another pilot doing paperwork. That's how he preferred it. In 8 years of flying the A-10 Thunderbolt II, he'd learned that the best operators were often the quietest ones. The door burst open with a metallic clang. Commander Nathan Cross strode in, and the room snapped to attention. The SEAL officer was a legend: 3 deployments, 2 silver stars, more confirmed kills than most snipers achieved in a career. His desert tan uniform was faded from sun and use, his face carved from granite and determination. Behind him walked Lieutenant Sarah Chen, intelligence officer, carrying a laptop that held the mission brief. "At ease, sit down," Cross's voice could cut steel. "We've got a situation and we've got 12 hours to fix it." The room settled into focused silence. Jake set down his clipboard, watching as Chen connected her laptop to the projector. A satellite image filled the screen: rugged mountain terrain, a compound nestled in a valley like a fortress. "This is Omar Ansari," Cross said as a photograph replaced the terrain. Middle-aged man, thick beard, cold eyes. Bomb maker. Responsible for at least 43 American KIAs over the past 18 months. IEDs, vehicle-borne explosives, suicide vests. This son of a bitch has killed more of our people than anyone else in this sector. Jake felt his jaw tighten. He'd flown medevac cover for too many of those attacks, watching medics fight to save torn bodies while he circled overhead, helpless. Cross clicked to the next slide. Intelligence confirms he's in this compound for the next 24 hours, meeting with other high-value targets. After that, he disappears into Pakistan and we lose him, maybe forever. "So we hit him tonight," a Ranger sergeant said. "Fast rope in, stack up, breach and clear." "Negative," Cross shook his head. "The compound's got civilian presence, women, children, possibly hostages. Can't risk a full breach until we thin out the guard force." He paused, ice-blue eyes scanning the room. "We need precision, surgical, which means we need a sniper to take out key targets before the assault team moves in." Several Army Rangers straightened, anticipation clear on their faces. Jake had seen their work. They were good, some of the best. Cross continued. "Here's the problem. The Overwatch position is here." He pointed to a ridgeline on the satellite image, 1,100 yards from the compound. Maybe further depending on where targets present themselves. Mountain terrain, unpredictable winds, high altitude. This isn't your standard urban hide. This is extreme long-range precision shooting under combat conditions. Lieutenant Chen added, "We need someone who can make multiple shots, different angles, possibly moving targets. Miss once, and we compromise the entire operation. Ansari escapes and more Americans die." The weight of those words settled over the room like a blanket. Cross planted his hands on the table, leaning forward. His voice dropped to something deadly serious. "So I'll ask once, and I need honest answers. No ego, no bullshit. Lives depend on this." He paused. "Any real snipers here?" Hands shot up from the Army contingent. Staff Sergeant Mike Reynolds, Sergeant First Class David Park, both men Jake knew by reputation. Solid operators with confirmed kills. Cross nodded, seeming satisfied. "Good, Reynolds, Park, you'll." "Sir." The voice came from the back, quiet, steady. Everyone turned. Jake Morrison stood, 6 feet of lean muscle in a sweat-stained flight suit. His weathered face showed 32 years of life, but his eyes held something older, something that had seen too much. The room erupted in scattered laughter. A few SEALs exchanged amused glances. One of the Rangers actually snorted. Cross's face went from surprise to irritation in half a second. "Pilot, sit down. I said real snipers, not." "I am one, sir." Jake's voice remained calm, but it cut through the noise like a blade. The laughter died. Cross straightened, eyes narrowing. "You're Air Force. You fly the Hog, provide close air support. What the hell do you know about?" "Before I was a pilot, I was Army Scout Sniper qualified, Commander." Jake didn't move from his position at attention. "Graduated Fort Benning Sniper School 2005, honor graduate. Served with 3rd Infantry Division, Fallujah and Ramadi. Confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 1,200 yards." The room went dead silent. Cross studied him for a long moment, jaw working. "That was 8 years ago." 8 years, 4 months, 12 days, sir." "Why'd you stop?" Jake's face remained impassive, but something flickered behind his eyes. Pain, old and deep. "My spotter was killed. I transferred to aviation." The blunt honesty hit harder than any explanation. Cross glanced at Lieutenant Chen, who was already typing on her laptop, pulling up Jake's personnel file. Her eyebrows rose as she read. "Commander," she said quietly, "he's telling the truth. Captain Jacob Morrison, former Sergeant First Class, Army Sniper School distinguished graduate. Multiple confirmed kills, including a 1,247-yard shot in Fallujah that," she looked up, stunned, "that saved an entire platoon from an ambush." Cross looked back at Jake with new eyes. The room held its collective breath. "All right, Captain, you've got my attention." Cross crossed his arms. "But attention doesn't save lives. Precision does. You claim you can still shoot." His voice carried challenge. "Prove it. Range, tomorrow, 600 hours. You miss one shot and you're back in your cockpit where you belong. Clear." "Crystal, sir." "Dismissed." As the room emptied, Jake gathered his clipboard. His hands were steady, but his heart hammered. He hadn't touched a sniper rifle in over 8 years. Hadn't squeezed a trigger with a human being in the crosshairs since the day Tommy Bryce died. But tomorrow, he'd have to remember how. Tomorrow, he'd have to prove that some skills never die. They just wait in the dark, ready to be called back to life. The mountain air was crisp and cold at 600 hours, carrying the scent of gun, oil, and possibility. Jake arrived at the range 15 minutes early, a habit drilled into him years ago. The sun hadn't yet cleared the peaks, leaving the valley in that gray pre-dawn light where shadows played tricks on the eyes. He carried a hard case containing a rifle he'd kept locked away for 8 years, 4 months, and 12 days. Last night, alone in his quarters, he'd opened that case for the first time since leaving the Army. The M24 sniper weapon system lay there, preserved in oil and memory. His hands had trembled as he'd cleaned it, muscle memory guiding movements he thought he'd forgotten. But the rifle remembered him, and so did the ghosts. Commander Cross was already there, along with 6 of his SEAL snipers. They stood near a tactical table covered in range cards and ballistic data, steam rising from coffee cups in the cold air. When Jake approached, the conversation stopped. "Captain Morrison," Cross nodded, "wasn't sure you'd show." "Said I would, sir." "Saying and doing are different things." Cross gestured to his men. "These are my boys, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams, Doc, Petty Officers Jensen, Rodriguez, Chen, Blackwood, and Harper. Between them, they've got over 200 confirmed kills. They're going to set up your shots today." Doc Williams stepped forward, a massive man with a shaved head and arms like tree trunks. His eyes held the flat, evaluating gaze of a predator. "Nothing personal, Captain, but we need to know you can actually do this. Our lives are going to depend on your trigger finger." Understood. Then let's not waste time. Doc pointed downrange. First shot 800 yards. Standard target, no wind compensation needed. Prove you can at least hit paper. The other SEALs smirked. 800 yards was basic for them, practically point-blank range for a trained sniper. It was a softball pitch, and they all knew it. Jake knelt behind the shooting bench, opening his rifle case. The M24 emerged, its synthetic stock worn smooth from use, the barrel still pristine. He assembled it with practiced efficiency, scope mounted, bolt checked, magazine inserted. His hands moved automatically, like a pianist returning to keys after years away. He chambered a round. The metallic click echoed in the morning stillness. "Wind's calm, 3 knots from the east," Rodriguez called out, reading an anemometer. "Temperature 45 degrees, barometric pressure standard. No excuses, pilot." Jake settled into position, cheek pressed against the stock. Through the scope, the world narrowed to a single point of focus. The target materialized, a standard silhouette at 800 yards. His breathing slowed automatically, in through the nose, out through the mouth, heart rate dropping, 68 beats per minute, 62, 58. And suddenly he was back in Fallujah, rooftop position. Tommy Bryce beside him, calling wind and distance in that Kentucky drawl. "Looking good, Jake. Send it when ready." Jake's finger found the trigger, squeezed. The rifle punched his shoulder, the suppressed bark swallowed by the mountains. Downrange, the target's center mass erupted. Doc lowered his binoculars. "Hit, center mass." His voice carried surprise he couldn't quite hide. "Lucky shot," Jensen muttered. Cross raised an eyebrow. "Let's see." Doc moved the target 1,000 yards, add some challenge. The SEALs repositioned a steel gong target at the new distance. Doc checked his instruments. Wind's picking up, 8 knots, quartering from the left. Elevation change puts you at a 17-degree angle. Compensate accordingly. Jake did the math in his head. Wind drift at this distance with current conditions, approximately 14 inches left. Elevation, add 2.3 mils. He adjusted his scope, settled back into position. This time the memories came harder. Tommy's laugh. The way he'd quote Johnny Cash between shots. The sound he'd made when the sniper's bullet found him instead of Jake. Jake pushed it down, focused, breath squeezed. The steel gong rang like a bell across the valley. "Dead center," Doc confirmed, respect creeping into his voice. The SEALs exchanged glances. This wasn't luck anymore. "All right, Captain," Cross stepped forward. "You can shoot static targets, but combat's different. Targets move. Stress is real. Fear fucks with your breathing." He nodded to Blackwood. "Set up the movers." Downrange, SEAL snipers activated a series of pop-up targets, silhouettes that would appear at random intervals at varying distances. 900 yards, 1,000, 1,100, some exposed for 3 seconds, others for 5. "You get 1 magazine," Cross said. 5 rounds. However many targets you hit in the next 60 seconds, that's your score. My boys average 3 hits, 4 if they're having a good day. Jake loaded 5 rounds, each one a small prayer. His hands were steady now, the old confidence returning like an old friend, or maybe an old enemy. He wasn't sure which. "On my mark," Cross said. 3, 2, 1, execute. The first target popped at 900 yards. Jake acquired, compensated, fired. Down. Second target, 1,100 yards, left side. Swing, breathe, squeeze, down. Third target, farthest point, moving laterally. Lead the target, account for wind. Fire, down. Fourth target, close range, 800, almost too easy, down. Fifth target, the hardest one. 1,200 yards, small exposure window, high wind. Jake's breathing stopped. Everything stopped. The world condensed to the space between heartbeats. He saw Tommy's face one last time, heard his friend's voice. "Take the shot, brother." Jake squeezed. The target disappeared. 60 seconds, 5 rounds, 5 hits. Doc Williams lowered his binoculars slowly, then turned to Cross. Commander, I've been doing this for 12 years. I've never seen anyone shoot 5 for 5 on the movers. The other SEALs stood silent. Their skepticism evaporated like morning mist. Cross approached Jake, hand extended. Welcome to the team, Captain. Mission brief is at 1400 hours. He paused, studying Jake's face. But I need to know, can you do this for real? Not steal targets, human beings. Jake disassembled his rifle, hands steady despite the storm inside him. I've done it before, Commander. I can do it again. Even after 8 years. Jake met his eyes. Some things you never forget, even when you want to. Cross nodded slowly. Get some rest. Tonight we hunt. As the SEALs dispersed, Doc lingered behind. Captain, that last shot, 1,200 yards, moving target, high wind. That was impossible. Jake shouldered his rifle case. No, Chief, that was necessary. There's a difference. Walking back to his quarters, Jake felt the weight of what he'd just agreed to. Tonight, he wouldn't be shooting steel. He'd be taking human lives again, looking through a scope at men who had families, dreams, fears. But he'd also be protecting his brothers, saving American lives, finishing what he'd started 8 years ago when Tommy died. The ghosts would have to wait. He had a mission to prepare for. At 1400 hours, the operations center hummed with controlled intensity. Jake entered to find the room transformed into a tactical nerve center. 3 large monitors dominated one wall, displaying satellite imagery, drone footage, and real-time intelligence feeds. A 3-dimensional terrain model sat on the center table, a perfect miniature replica of the target area, complete with elevation changes, structures, and approach routes. Commander Cross stood at the head of the table, surrounded by his SEAL team and a handful of support personnel. Lieutenant Chen worked a laptop, updating imagery as new intelligence arrived. The Air Force Combat Controller, Major Steve Hayes, monitored radio frequencies. An Army Ranger liaison, Captain Mike Torres, represented the Quick Reaction Force on standby. Captain Morrison, join us. Cross gestured to an open spot at the table. Jake moved forward, aware of the eyes tracking him. These men had seen him shoot that morning, but trust in combat was earned through more than marksmanship. It required tactical acumen, decision-making under pressure, and the ability to think like a warrior. Here's what we know. Cross activated a laser pointer, highlighting the compound on the screen. Omar Ansari arrived at this location 18 hours ago. Signal intelligence confirms he's meeting with 2 other high-value targets, Rashid Durrani, Taliban regional commander, and Khalid Massoud, weapons facilitator for the Haqqani network. All 3 in one place. This is a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Chen clicked through images. The compound sits in a valley, elevation 8,200 feet. Single-access road from the north, sheer cliff faces on the east and west sides. Mountain ridgeline to the south, that's our approach. Structure is reinforced concrete, 2 stories, approximately 12 rooms. Infrared shows 15 to 20 heat signatures inside, but we can't differentiate combatants from civilians. Guard force, Doc Williams asked. 8 confirmed external guards rotating in 4-hour shifts. Unknown number of internal security. Intel suggests Ansari travels with at least 4 personal bodyguards, former Pakistani Special Services Group, highly trained. Jake leaned over the terrain model, his pilot's brain automatically processing the information. Elevation changes, wind patterns, line of sight, fields of fire. He'd studied terrain from 10,000 feet for 8 years. Now he was seeing it from ground level again. Proposed overwatch position is here. Cross pointed to a spot on the southern ridgeline. Grid coordinates 42 SVB 87342156. Elevation 8,800 feet, approximately 900 yards from the compound. It offers concealment and a decent shooting angle into the courtyard. Jake studied the position, then traced his finger along the ridge. "Commander, may I?" Cross nodded. "This position gives you 900 yards, but the angle's wrong." Jake pointed to the terrain model. "See how the compound's second story creates a shadow across the courtyard at dawn? Your high-value targets will be inside until full light. By then, you've lost surprise. Plus, this position," he tapped the spot Cross had indicated, "has elevation advantage, but it's the obvious choice. If Ansari's security is former SSG, they've scouted it." Cross's eyes narrowed. "You see a better option." Jake's finger moved further along the ridgeline. "Here. Grid 42 SVB 87562-178. It's 200 yards further, 100 yards total distance, but it gives you a different angle. You're shooting into the eastern side of the compound, catching morning sun instead of shadow. The elevation drop is steeper, harder climb, but the concealment is better." And he pulled out a pen, sketching wind patterns. "As a pilot, I've flown this valley dozens of times. Morning thermals create predictable wind currents. From this position, wind becomes consistent, not variable, easier to calculate." The room went quiet. Doc Williams pulled up topographical data on his tablet, cross-referencing Jake's suggested position. His eyebrows rose. "Damn, he's right. This angle gives us visibility into areas the primary position doesn't cover." Cross studied the model for a long moment. "The extra 200 yards, that's a problem for most shooters." Jake met his gaze. "Not for me." "Confident. Realistic." A ghost of a smile crossed Cross's face. "All right, we use Morrison's position. Here's the mission flow: 400 hours Black Hawk insertion 5 clicks south, 2 hours to hump to Overwatch, 600 we're in position. Jake and Doc establish the hide, begin surveillance. 6:30 first light. Guards change shift, that's when Jake starts work." Chen pulled up guard rotation schedules. "Pattern analysis shows shift change involves all external guards converging on the main entrance for briefing. 30-second window where they're clustered." "Too risky," Jake interjected. "Shoot one in a cluster, the others scatter, and we lose the advantage. Better to wait until they disperse to positions. Pick them off one at a time, spaced out. Suppressed shots, they won't immediately know where it's coming from." Cross nodded slowly. "Good call. Doc, you'll spot for Jake. Identify targets, priority sequence. Jake makes the shots. Once external security is neutralized, assault team moves in. 8 operators, 2 4-man elements. Jensen leads Alpha team through the front. I take Bravo through the rear entrance." "Rules of engagement?" Rodriguez asked. "Anyone armed is hostile. Anyone makes a move toward a weapon, they're down. Women and children exercise extreme caution. This is precision work, people. We're not painting the compound red. We're surgically removing 3 tumors." Lieutenant Chen spoke up. "Time-sensitive target window closes at 1800 hours tomorrow. Intelligence indicates Ansari leaves the compound after evening prayers, heading into Pakistan. After that, he's gone." "Which gives us one shot at this," Cross said. "Questions?" Jake raised his hand. "I want my A-10 on standby." Cross frowned. "You'll be on the ground with us, can't be in 2 places." "Not for the infiltration. For exfil if things go sideways. Another pilot can have my bird armed and ready at FOB Delta. That's 12 minutes flight time from the target area. If you need close air support, I can break from the Overwatch position, get to emergency extract, and be airborne in under 20 minutes." "That's a hell of an extraction sprint down a mountain," Doc pointed out. "I'll manage." Cross considered it. "Hayes, coordinate with FOB Delta. Get Captain Morrison's aircraft prepped and a standby pilot on alert. If Morrison calls for extraction to fly CAS, make it happen." He looked at Jake. "But understand, Captain, you leave that Overwatch position, and my boys lose their guardian angel." "Won't leave unless you're about to be overrun, Commander. You have my word." "Good enough." Cross checked his watch. "We've got 12 hours before insertion. Get your gear squared away. Doc, take Morrison to supply, get him outfitted with proper field kit. Morrison, you good with a secondary weapon. Prefer the M4 standard load. Done. Intel update at 2200 hours, final brief at 300. Try to sleep, tomorrow's going to be a long day. Cross looked around the table. Gentlemen, we're hunting some very bad people who have killed a lot of our brothers and sisters. Let's make sure they don't kill anyone else. Dismissed. As the room emptied, Jake lingered over the terrain model. His hand traced the route from overwatch position to extraction point. 12 minutes down a mountain that took 2 hours to climb. It would be the fastest descent of his life, or his last. Doc approached, massive arms crossed. That was solid tactical thinking in there. The angle, the wind patterns, you think like a shooter and a pilot simultaneously. That's rare. Just trying to bring everyone home, Chief. Doc, call me Doc. He extended his hand. We're about to spend tomorrow in a hide together. Might as well be on first-name basis. You can call me Marcus if you want. Jake shook it. Jake, though most people call me Hawkeye. Hawkeye? Doc grinned. I like it. Tell me something, Hawkeye. Why'd you really volunteer for this? You've got a cushy pilot gig. 3 hots and a cot, fly missions from altitude, never have to look your enemy in the eye. Why go back to the dirt? Jake stared at the compound on the screen. Because Omar Ansari built the IED that killed a medevac crew I was escorting last month. I watched those Blackhawk medics die trying to save wounded soldiers. Watched it from 5,000 feet up, completely helpless. He turned to Doc. I'm tired of being helpless. Tired of watching people die from a distance. If I can put a bullet in the man responsible, I will. Doc studied him for a long moment. That's a good reason. Just make sure revenge doesn't make your hands shake when it matters. They won't shake. How can you be sure? Jake picked up his rifle case. Because when I'm behind a scope, I'm not Jake Morrison anymore. I'm just the shot, and the shot doesn't miss. He walked out, leaving Doc standing alone in the operations center. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting them in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere beyond those peaks, Omar Ansari sat in his compound, believing he was safe. Tomorrow, Jake would teach him otherwise. The Black Hawk's rotors beat a rhythmic thunder against the night sky as it skimmed low over the Hindu Kush mountains. Inside the darkened cabin, 12 operators sat in silence, faces painted black and green, eyes hidden behind night vision goggles. The helicopter flew nape of the earth, so close to the terrain that rocks seemed to reach up and grab at the skids. Jake sat between Doc Williams and a SEAL named Jensen, his body swaying with the aircraft's movements. 80 pounds of gear pressed down on him, rifle case strapped to his back, tactical vest loaded with ammunition, water, communications equipment, and survival gear. His M4 carbine rested across his lap, magazine loaded, safety on. He traded his flight suit for multicam fatigues that still felt foreign after 8 years of wearing Air Force Blue. The loadmaster held up 5 fingers, 5 minutes. Jake's heart rate kicked up, not from fear. He'd flown combat missions where surface-to-air missiles painted his aircraft. This was different. Anticipation. The same feeling he'd had in Fallujah before operations, when the world condensed to mission objectives and survival instincts. Commander Cross's voice crackled through the headset. 2 minutes. Remember silent insertion. We're 15 clicks from the target, but assume hostiles could be anywhere. Stay tight, stay quiet, stay alive. The Black Hawk banked hard, dropping into a narrow valley. Through the open door, Jake saw nothing but darkness and the faint outline of jagged peaks against starlight. The pilot was flying on instruments and balls, navigating terrain that could kill them all with one wrong move. 30 seconds. The helicopter flared, rotors clawing at thin mountain air. 8,000 feet elevation. The air was noticeably thinner, every breath requiring more effort. Jake's pilot brain automatically calculated density, altitude, engine performance, lift capacity. Old habits. Go, go, go. The SEALs moved like shadows, flowing out of the helicopter in perfect sequence. Jake followed Doc, boots hitting rocky ground hard. The impact jarred through his knees despite the practiced landing. Around him, operators fanned out in a defensive perimeter, weapons raised, scanning for threats. The Black Hawk's engines roared as it lifted away, and then silence crashed down like a physical force. No city lights, no aircraft sounds, just wind whistling through rocks and the team's controlled breathing. Cross materialized beside Jake, hand signals only. Formation up, move out. They began to climb. The first hour was brutal. The terrain was a nightmare of loose scree, boulder fields, and steep inclines that required using hands as much as feet. Jake's legs burned. His lungs screamed for oxygen that wasn't there. The altitude was kicking his ass harder than he'd expected. Flying at altitude and climbing at altitude were completely different experiences. Doc moved ahead of him, massive frame somehow gliding over obstacles that made Jake struggle. The SEAL would occasionally glance back, checking on the pilot. Jake refused to show weakness, matching pace step for grinding step. 2 hours in, they paused for a tactical halt. Jake's fatigues were soaked with sweat despite the freezing temperature. His hands were torn from scrambling over rocks. But when Doc offered water, Jake took only a small sip. Hydration was critical, but so was bladder discipline. They'd be lying in a hide for hours with no bathroom breaks. "How you holding up, Hawkeye?" Doc whispered, his voice barely audible. "Still breathing." Pilots usually can't handle this part. All that soft living in climate-controlled cockpits. Jake managed a grim smile. "I grew up in Montana, Chief. Spent every fall hunting elk in mountains that make these look like speed bumps. My old man believed if you couldn't pack out your kill on your back, you didn't deserve to hunt." Doc's teeth flashed white in the darkness. "Might make a ground pounder out of you yet." Cross signaled, "Move." The next hour was worse. They hit a section where the ridgeline narrowed to a knife-edge, 3-foot-wide spine of rock with 1,000-foot drops on either side. Wind gusted unpredictably, threatening to pitch them into the abyss. Jake focused on the man in front of him, matching steps exactly, not looking down. His mind drifted, dangerous at this altitude and exhaustion level. He saw Tommy Bryce walking point on a Fallujah street, saw the building where they'd set up their hide, saw the moment the enemy sniper's bullet meant for Jake found Tommy instead. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you, brother," Jake had whispered, cradling Tommy's body as life drained away. Tommy's last words, "Not your fault, Jake, never your fault, just finish the mission, always finish the mission." "Hawkeye," Doc's voice pulled him back. "Stay with me, man, head in the game." Jake blinked, refocused. They'd cleared the knife-edge ridge and were approaching the final ascent to the overwatch position. The compound was invisible in the darkness below, but Jake could feel it, a malignant presence waiting to be cleansed. At 5:45 hours, they reached the position Jake had identified on the terrain model. It was perfect, a natural depression in the ridgeline, rock formations providing concealment from below, scrub brush breaking up their silhouette from above. The angle into the compound's eastern side was exactly as he'd calculated. Cross hand signaled. Doc and Jake establish hide. Rest of team, defensive perimeter 50 meters downslope. The SEALs melted away into the darkness. Suddenly, it was just Jake and Doc, alone on a mountain, 1,100 yards from men who needed killing. They worked in silence, setting up the hide with practiced efficiency. Doc unrolled a camouflage net, draping it to blend with surrounding vegetation. Jake assembled his rifle, each component clicking into place with satisfying precision. Scope mounted, bipod extended, suppressor attached. 5 magazines, 25 rounds total, arranged within easy reach. Doc set up the spotting scope, then pulled out a laser rangefinder and began marking distances to key points in the compound below. Main entrance, 1,147 yards. Southeast Guard Tower, 1,089 yards. Courtyard Center, 1,124 yards. Jake logged each measurement, building a mental map of the battlefield. He settled behind his rifle, adjusting the bipod until the weapon sat perfectly level. Through the scope, he could see the compound's dim outline. No lights yet. The occupants still slept, unaware that death watched from the mountains. "First light in 30 minutes, Doc whispered. "You ready for this?" Jake's hand rested on the rifle, steady as granite. "Been ready for 8 years, 4 months, and 13 days. That's oddly specific. That's how long Tommy's been dead. That's how long I've been waiting to finish what we started." Doc was quiet for a moment. "This isn't Fallujah, Hawkeye. This is a different war, different enemy. Don't let ghosts guide your trigger finger." "They won't." Jake chambered around, the metallic sound crisp in the pre-dawn silence. "But they'll watch, and when this is over, maybe they'll finally rest." Below, a light flickered on in the compound, then another. The target area was waking up. Doc keyed his radio. "Overwatch in position, beginning surveillance." Cross's response came through Jake's earpiece. "Copy that. Assault elements standing by. Hawkeye, you are authorized to engage targets of opportunity once identified. Make every shot count." "Roger that, Commander." The sky began to lighten, deep purple fatting to gray. Jake's heart rate dropped to 52 beats per minute. His breathing became shallow, controlled. The world narrowed to the circle of his scope, where death waited to be delivered at the speed of sound. Through the growing light, figures began to move in the compound below. Guards stretching, yawning, beginning their morning routines. Normal men doing a job. Men who helped build bombs that tore children apart. Jake's finger rested outside the trigger guard. "Not yet. Wait for the perfect shot. Wait for certainty." Doc's voice barely a breath. 2 guards northeast corner. AK-47, cigarettes, looking relaxed. Range 1,089 yards. "I see them." Wind is 4 knots, quartering left. Temperature 38 degrees. No mirage yet. Jake made micro-adjustments to his scope. The crosshairs settled on the first guard's chest. Young man, maybe 25, laughing at something his companion said. "You're cleared hot on Commander's mark," Doc said. Jake waited, breathed, remembered Tommy, remembered every American those bombs had killed. Cross's voice. "Hawkeye, this is 6 actual. You have execute authority. Send it when ready." Jake's finger moved to the trigger. The hunt had begun. Dawn broke over the Hindu Kush like a wound opening in the sky, crimson and gold bleeding across the eastern horizon. Jake watched through his scope as the compound transformed from shadowy outline to tactical reality. Every detail crystallized in the growing light. Concrete walls pockmarked by time and weather, guard towers at 3 corners, a central courtyard with a dry fountain, vehicles parked haphazardly near the main gate. And men, armed men moving with the casual confidence of those who believed themselves safe. "Primary target area is hot," Doc whispered. I pressed to his spotting scope. "Count 8 external guards rotating positions. 2 on the main gate, 2 roaming the perimeter, 4 at static posts." Jake tracked movement through his rifle scope. The magnification brought him close enough to see facial features, read body language, count ammunition magazines in tactical vests. These weren't farmers forced into fighting. These were professional soldiers, Taliban, likely former Afghan National Army who'd switched sides when the money got better. "Guard Alpha main gate left position," Doc called. "Range 1,147 yards. Wind holding steady at 4 knots, quartering left. Temperature rising 42 degrees now. Correction factor 0.3 mils left, 0.2 mils up." Jake found the target. Mid-30s, thick beard, Chinese-made QBZ-95 rifle slung across his chest. The man was drinking from a canteen, talking to his partner. Human. Real. Not a steel silhouette on a range. Jake's breathing slowed. In through the nose, filling the diaphragm, out through the mouth, long and controlled. His heart rate dropped 50 beats per minute, 48. The rifle became an extension of his body, the crosshairs an extension of his will. He saw Tommy Bryce in his peripheral vision, not really there but present nonetheless. His spotter, his brother, 8 years dead but never forgotten. "Finish the mission," Tommy's ghost whispered. "Always finish the mission." Cross's voice crackled in Jake's earpiece. "Hawkeye 6 Actual, you are cleared to engage. Priority targets are external guards. Work from east to west, eliminate them sequentially. Assault team moves on your 6th shot. Acknowledge." Hawkeye copies. Cleared to engage 6 targets east to west sequence. Standing by. Send it. Jake's world collapsed to the space between heartbeats. The compound disappeared. The mountain disappeared. There was only the target, the wind, the bullet's arc through space and time. Physics and will merged into a single moment of absolute clarity. His finger took up the trigger slack, 2 pounds of pressure, then 3. The break point approached like destiny. He thought of the medevac crew, Captain Sarah Chen and her team, blown apart by an IED while trying to save wounded soldiers. Their Blackhawks spiraling into the ground while Jake circled overhead, helpless, screaming into his radio for help that would never arrive. Omar Ansari had built that bomb. Jake squeezed. The rifle spoke, a suppressed cough that barely disturbed the morning silence. Through the scope, Jake watched the bullet's flight compressed into instantaneous result. The guard's canteen exploded, but by then the 7.62 round had already passed through his chest, severed his aorta, and exited between his shoulder blades. The man collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. His partner froze, confused, looking around for a threat that killed from over a kilometer away. "Hit, center mass," Doc confirmed. "Target down. Second guard at main gate is exposed. Same windage, adjust elevation 0.1 mil down for range 1,142 yards." Jake cycled the bolt. The spent casing ejected with a soft clink. He chambered a fresh round, acquired the second target. The man was moving now, reaching for his radio, beginning to understand that something was wrong. Too late. Jake fired. The guard spun, clutching his throat where the bullet had found him. He fell backward, blood misting in the morning light. "Target down, 2 for 2. Doc's voice held professional respect. "Northeast tower guard is turning toward the gate. Range 1,089 yards. Wind steady. Send it." The tower guard had his rifle up now, scanning. Smart. Disciplined. Searching for the threat that had killed his comrades. He'd probably been a soldier before the Taliban recruited him. Maybe even a good one. Didn't matter. Jake's third shot took him in the upper chest. The man tumbled from the tower, falling 15 feet to the ground and moving no more. 3 down, southeast roaming guard heading toward the main gate. He knows something's wrong. Range 1,156 yards, moving target walking speed. Doc paused. "This one's tricky, Hawkeye. Lead him or take the shot." Jake tracked the guard through his scope. The man was walking quickly, weapon raised, head swiveling. Alert, dangerous, but predictable, moving in a straight line toward his fallen comrades. "Lead the target. Calculate intercept point. Factor in bullet flight time, roughly 1.3 seconds at this range. Account for the target's movement, approximately 5 feet per second. Lead by 7 feet." Jake placed his crosshairs 7 feet ahead of the moving guard. Waited for his breathing to sync with his heartbeat. Waited for the moment when everything aligned. Squeezed. The guard ran directly into the bullet's path. He dropped instantly, killed by geometry and timing. "Jesus Christ," Doc breathed. "That was a perfect intercept shot, 4 down." Cross's voice, "Hawkeye, outstanding work, continue." But Jake was already tracking the 5th target, a guard at the southwest corner who just realized his entire perimeter was collapsing. The man was smart, diving for cover behind a concrete barrier. only his head and shoulders visible, a difficult shot made harder by the man's panic making him bob and weave. Southwest Guard, partial concealment, range 1,134 yards, Doc called. Wind shifting, 6 knots now, more left deflection. He's scared, moving erratically. Jake waited. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon. The panicked guard would make a mistake, expose himself, give Jake the shot he needed. Seconds crawled by. The guard's head popped up, looking toward the main gate where his comrades lay dead. 1 second, 2 seconds. Jake fired. The guard's head snapped back. He slumped over the barrier, visible to Jake but hidden from anyone inside the compound. 5 down. 1 external guard remaining, northwest roaming position, but he's running for the main building. Range 1,167 yards, fast-moving target. Jake tracked him. The man was sprinting, rifle bouncing against his chest, genuine terror driving his legs. He was 20 yards from the door. 15. 10. The shot was nearly impossible. Extreme range. Fast-moving target. Multiple corrections needed simultaneously. Jake didn't think. He acted. Muscle memory from 1,000 hunts, 1,000 training scenarios, 1,000 moments when failure meant death. He led the target, compensated for wind and elevation and the runner's desperate speed. Fired. The running guard pitched forward, sliding face first into the dirt 5 feet from safety. 6 down, Doc's voice carried genuine awe. 6 shots, 6 kills, ranges from 1,089 to 1,167 yards. Hawkeye, that was the most incredible shooting I've ever witnessed. Cross's voice cut through. Assault teams execute, execute, execute. Hawkeye, maintain overwatch. Anyone exits that building armed, put them down. Through his scope, Jake watched as shadows materialized from the rocks, seals moving with lethal grace toward the compound. They flowed like water, weapons up, closing the distance. 60 seconds and they'd be at the walls. Then the door burst open. Not 1 man, not 2. A dozen armed fighters poured from the building, weapons blazing. Someone inside had understood the attack and organized a defense. The courtyard erupted in muzzle flashes and shouting. Contact, heavy contact, Cross's voice. Multiple hostiles were pinned at the south wall. Doc swore. That's more than 8 guards. Intel was wrong, there's at least 20 fighters in there. Jake was already moving his rifle, tracking targets. A fighter with an RPG appeared on the second-floor balcony, tube loaded, aiming down at Cross's team. Jake fired. The RPG gunner fell, but his weapon tumbled over the railing, landing in the courtyard where another fighter grabbed it. Doc called the shot. Range 1,124 yards, wind 7 knots left, target moving. Jake fired before Doc finished. The second RPG gunner went down, but the launcher discharged as he fell, the rocket screaming into the sky before exploding harmlessly against the cliff face. More fighters appeared, 10, 15, 20. The compound was a hornet's nest and Jake had kicked it hard. Hawkeye, we need air support now, Cross shouted over gunfire. We are seriously outnumbered. Where's that QRF? Another voice answered. Warthog flight is 18 minutes out. Say again, 18 minutes. Jake's blood turned to ice. 18 minutes. His brothers would be dead in 5. He kept firing. 7, 8, 9 targets down, but for every fighter he killed, 2 more appeared. His ammunition was depleting. 12 rounds left. 10, 8. Doc, I'm going. Going where? Jake was already packing his rifle. To get my real gun, hold this position, guide me by radio. That's a 12-minute sprint down a vertical mountain. Then I better get moving. Jake keyed his radio. Cross, Hawkeye is extracting to emergency LZ. I'll have air support overhead in 15 minutes. 15, Hawk, we might not have 15 minutes. Jake slung his rifle, grabbed his M4. Then hold on tight, Commander. Because the warthog's coming and she's hungry. He launched himself down the mountain at a dead run, gravity and desperation his only allies. Behind him, Doc's voice, God help them, he's actually going to do it, hit the mountain running and didn't stop. What had taken 2 brutal hours to climb became a controlled fall down near vertical terrain. Gravity pulled him forward, momentum threatening to pitch him face first into rocks with every step. His boots skidded on loose scree, sending stones cascading down the slope in a rattling avalanche. He leaped over boulders, slid down packed dirt sections, used his hands to catch himself when his legs couldn't keep up with his speed. His lungs burned. The thin air at 8,000 feet turned each breath into a desperate gasp. His legs screamed in protest, muscles tearing under the strain of absorbing impact after impact. But he didn't slow down, couldn't slow down. Doc's voice crackled in his earpiece, breathless from his own shooting. Hawkeye, I count 23 hostiles now. They're flanking from the west side. Cross's team is pinned in the courtyard. Jake vaulted over a fallen log, landed wrong, felt his ankle twist, ignored it, kept running. Cross's voice, tight with controlled fury. Jensen's hit. Rodriguez, get him to cover. Blackwood, watch our 6. Automatic weapons fire roared in the background. Hawkeye, I don't know if you can hear me, but we really need that air support. 9 minutes, Jake gasped into his radio, his voice raw. Hold, 9 minutes. We might not have 9 minutes. Jake pushed harder. The knife-edge ridge loomed ahead, the 3-foot-wide spine with 1,000-foot drops on either side. He'd crossed it carefully on the way up, testing each step. Now he ran across it at full speed, arms windmilling for balance, certain death flanking him on both sides. One misstep, one loose rock, 1 second of hesitation. He made it across in 15 seconds. That aged him 15 years. Hawkeye, Doc, they're bringing up a technical pickup truck with a mounted machine gun. It's tearing apart our cover. Cross can't move. Jake hit a steep section and simply jumped, sliding 30 feet down on his back, rocks tearing through his fatigues, skin shredding. He rolled to his feet at the bottom without stopping, legs pumping. 6 minutes. His tactical vest snagged on a branch. He ripped it free, kept running. Blood ran down his arms from a dozen cuts. His right knee buckled with every third step. Something torn or sprained didn't matter. His body would hold together for 6 more minutes or it wouldn't. Simple as that. Contact front, Cross shouted. They're pushing through the main gate. Harper, light them up. Chen, we need static explosion. Down, Chen is down. 5 minutes, Jake wheezed. Almost there. Doc's voice. Hawkeye, they've got RPGs on the rooftop. 2 shooters. Cross can't get an angle if they get organized. He didn't finish. Didn't have to. RPGs would obliterate the SEAL team's covered positions, turn their defensive stance into a massacre. Jake saw the emergency landing zone ahead, a relatively flat section of terrain where the little bird waited, rotors still. The pilot stood outside, smoking a cigarette, relaxed. He hadn't heard the firefight 3 clicks away. Jake burst from the tree line at a full sprint, waving his arms. Start it up, now. The pilot dropped his cigarette, startled. Sir, you're not supposed to be back for. Now, GODDMMIT. Something in Jake's voice, the raw desperation, the blood, the wild look in his eyes made the pilot move. He jumped into the cockpit. The turbine whined to life. Jake didn't wait for the rotors to reach full speed. He threw himself into the passenger seat. FOB Alpha, maximum speed, lives on the line. The little bird leaped into the air, nose dropping as the pilot pushed the throttle forward. The small helicopter screamed across the valleys, so low that Jake could have reached out and touched the treetops. Cross's voice, RPG, incoming, explosion, static, then, missed us by 5 feet, next one won't. Hawkeye, where the hell are you? 3 minutes, I'm coming. The little bird banked hard around a peak. FOB Alpha appeared ahead, A cluster of buildings, vehicles, and Jake's A-10 sitting on the tarmac like a predator waiting to hunt. The pilot didn't bother with a proper landing, just flared hard and hovered 2 feet off the ground. Jake jumped out before they'd fully stopped, hitting the ground running. His ankle gave out. He rolled, came up limping, kept moving. 50 yards to his aircraft. 40, 30. Staff Sergeant Mike Torres, his crew chief, stood beside the A-10 with a clipboard. His eyes went wide seeing Jake's condition, torn uniform, blood-streaked, wild-eyed. "Captain Morrison, sir, you're supposed to be." "Is she armed?" "Yes, sir, full load, but you can't just." "Pre-flight done?" "Yes, but regulations say." Jake was already climbing the ladder to the cockpit. "Get that ladder clear. I'm launching now." "Sir, you need authorization from." "My team is dying." Jake's roar silenced every objection. He dropped into the cockpit, hands moving on autopilot. Master arms switch on, avionics on, engines starting. The twin turbofans spooled up with their characteristic high-pitched whine. Tower frequency crackled to life. "Warthog 1-1, you are not cleared for." "Tower, this is Hawkeye. I have troops in contact, extreme danger close. I am launching with or without clearance. Clear the pattern or don't, but I'm rolling in 30 seconds. A pause, then, "Hawkeye, pattern is clear, Godspeed." Jake didn't bother with the pre-flight checklist. Didn't check fuel, didn't verify weapon systems, didn't do any of the 100 things pilots were supposed to do. His hands moved from memory, muscle, and instinct taking over. Throttles forward. Brakes released. The A-10 Thunderbolt II rolled forward, picking up speed. 50 knots. 60. 80. The ungainly aircraft, built around a gun so massive that the plane was essentially a flying tank killer, lurched into the air with all the grace of a pregnant buffalo. But once airborne, she became something else entirely, something deadly. Cross's voice, desperate now. "They're breaching our position. We're going hand to hand. Hawkeye, if you can hear me." "I hear you, Commander." Jake pushed the throttles to max, the A-10 accelerating to 380 knots, faster than she was supposed to go at this altitude, but Jake didn't care. "I'm 2 minutes out. Mark your position with smoke now." "We can't. We're too close to the enemy." "Then stay low and pray my eyesight's still good." Jake screamed over the mountains, flying terrain following so low that his landing gear brushed treetops. The compound appeared ahead, smoke rising, muzzle flashes visible even in daylight, small figures scattered across the courtyard locked in desperate combat. His targeting systems came alive. The GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barrel Gatling gun that fired 30mm rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute, began its electronic warm-up cycle. The gun was so powerful that, when it fired, it actually slowed the aircraft down from recoil. Jake's hands were rock steady on the controls. This was what he'd been born to do, not sniping from a hide. This, bringing overwhelming firepower to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "Cross, I'm in hot. I need your team's location right now or I can't shoot." "South courtyard. We're against the south wall, clustered near the fountain." Jake's targeting pod swiveled, locked. He could see everything now through multiple feeds, infrared, optical, weapons track. The SEALs huddled against the south wall, surrounded. Enemy fighters closing from 3 directions. The technical with mounted gun advancing. 2 RPG shooters on the roof taking aim. No time for a careful approach. No time for a traditional gun run. His team was 30 seconds from being overrun. Jake did something no A-10 pilot was supposed to do. He rolled inverted, pulled the nose down into a nearly vertical dive, and came at the compound from directly above. His targeting reticle painted the technical truck. Fingers found the trigger. "Danger close, keep your heads down." The world exploded in sound and fury as Jake brought the wrath of the Warthog down upon the enemy. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon roared to life, with a sound that made thunder seem like a whisper. BRRRRRRT. The distinctive noise, 70 rounds per second of 30mm depleted uranium penetrators screaming downward at 3,500 feet per second, was unlike anything else in warfare. It wasn't a rat-tat-tat of machine gun fire. It was a deep, guttural roar that vibrated through bone and skull, the sound of God tearing the sky apart. Jake's first burst lasted 2 seconds, 60 rounds. The technical truck with its mounted machine gun disintegrated. Not destroyed, disintegrated. Metal, rubber, glass, and the men operating it simply ceased to exist in any recognizable form. Where there had been a vehicle, there was now a crater and a debris field. The recoil from the gun actually slowed the A-10 mid-flight, the aircraft shuddering like it had hit a wall. Jake compensated instantly, banking hard right, pulling out of his near-vertical dive at an angle that made his airframe groan and his vision gray at the edges from G-forces. "Yeah," Doc's voice screamed over the radio. "That's what I'm talking about." But Jake wasn't done, not even close. He pulled up, rolled the aircraft, and came around for another pass. Through his targeting pod, he could see enemy fighters scattering in panic, running for cover that wouldn't save them. The 2 RPG shooters on the roof were frantically trying to track his aircraft, but the A-10 was designed to take punishment. Armored cockpit, redundant systems. She could lose an engine, half a wing, and still bring her pilot home. Jake lined up the rooftop. His finger found the trigger again. BRRRRRRT. The rooftop exploded. Concrete, rebar, and human beings pulverized into dust. The 2 RPG shooters and 3 other fighters who'd been positioning there simply vanished, erased from existence by overwhelming firepower. "North Wall," Cross shouted. "Fighters massing at the North Wall, 20+ hostiles." Jake's eyes found them through his systems, a cluster of Taliban fighters regrouping, trying to organize a counterattack against the pinned SEALs. Some were firing AK-47s at his aircraft, utterly futile. The rounds bounced off his armored belly like raindrops. He adjusted course, brought the nose around. The targeting computer painted the cluster. Distance, 1,200 meters. Angle, optimal. Collateral damage risk, minimal. SEAL team position, clear by 40 meters. "Heads down, Commander. This one's gonna be loud." Jake squeezed the trigger and held it. A 3-second burst. 210 rounds of pure devastation. BRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR fast. The ground itself seemed to liquefy under the impact of hundreds of 30-millimeter rounds hitting in a concentrated area. Dirt, rock, and debris fountained 50 feet into the air. When the smoke cleared, there was a trench where the wall had been. "Holy shit," Jensen's voice. "I've never seen anything like that." But Jake's eyes were already scanning for the next threat. Years of close air support missions had taught him how enemies thought, how they moved, where they hid. He spotted movement in the compound's main building, fighters taking position at windows, preparing to fire down on the SEALs. He couldn't use the gun, too close to potential civilians, but he had other options. Cross, are there friendlies in the main building? Negative, all hostiles. Copy, stand by for Maverick. Jake selected an AGM-65 Maverick missile from his weapons menu. The air-to-ground missile locked onto the building's second floor, the infrared seeker identifying the heat signatures of multiple targets clustered there. He fired. The missile streaked downward on a pillar of white smoke, impacting the second floor with surgical precision. The explosion was massive but contained, the shaped charge designed to penetrate fortified structures. The second floor collapsed into the first in a cascade of concrete and steel. Silence fell over the compound, ringing, dusty, smoke-filled silence. Jake circled overhead, eyes scanning for any remaining threats. His targeting system showed no movement except for the SEAL team cautiously emerging from their defensive position. Bodies littered the compound, at least 30 enemy fighters down, possibly more buried in rubble. "Cross Hawkeye, how copy?" Cross's voice came back shaky but alive. "Hawkeye, we copy. Compound is secure. I say again, compound is secure. Hostiles neutralized." "Casualties?" "Chen took shrapnel. Jensen has a through-and-through on his leg. I've got a concussion from that RPG near miss. But we're all alive. Because of you." Jake's hands were trembling now, adrenaline crash beginning. He just conducted one of the most dangerous close air support runs in A-10 history. Inverted dive, danger close, multiple targets, no forward air controller, relying purely on his own eyes and instincts. Any mistake would have killed his own people. But he hadn't made a mistake. "Hawkeye, Doc here. I'm still up at the overwatch position. I watched the whole thing." The massive SEAL's voice was thick with emotion. "That was the most beautiful, terrifying, incredible thing I've ever witnessed. You saved us, all of us." Jake swallowed hard. "Just doing my job, Doc. What about the primary targets, Ansari, Durrani, Massoud?" "Cross is checking now. Stand by." Jake maintained his orbit, fuel gauge showing he had 20 minutes of loiter time before he'd need to RTB. Below, the SEALs moved through the compound methodically, clearing rooms, checking bodies, securing the objective. 5 minutes passed. Then Cross's voice. "Hawkeye, Cross, we've got them. All 3 high-value targets confirmed KIA. Ansari was in the building when your Maverick hit. Durrani and Massoud were caught in your gun runs. Mission complete." Jake closed his eyes for just a moment. Omar Ansari, the bomb maker who'd killed Captain Sarah Chen's medevac crew, who'd murdered 43 Americans, who'd caused so much suffering, was dead. The mission Tommy Bryce had died trying to complete 8 years ago was finally finished. "Good copy, Commander. Recommend immediate exfil." This noise carried for miles. "Hostiles will converge on this position." "Agreed. Blackhawks inbound, ETA 12 minutes. Doc, get down here for extraction." "Roger that, on my way." Jake checked his systems, began climbing to a safer altitude. His aircraft had taken a few hits, small arms fire, nothing serious. She'd brought him through again, this ungainly, beautiful, deadly machine that pilots called the Warthog with affection. As he climbed, the sun broke through the morning clouds, painting the mountains in gold. Below, his team, because they were his team now, earned through blood and fire, prepared for extraction. Above, the sky stretched endless and blue, welcoming him home. But something felt different, lighter, like a weight he'd been carrying for 8 years had finally lifted. "Tommy," Jake whispered into his oxygen mask. "Mission complete, brother. We got them all. You can rest now." The radio crackled. "Say again, Hawkeye, didn't copy." Jake smiled. "Nothing, Commander. Just talking to an old friend. I'll maintain CAP until your birds arrive." "Copy that in Hawkeye." "Yeah. When we get back, you're drinking with us. Whether you like it or not, you're one of us now." Jake's throat tightened. "Roger that, Commander. It would be an honor." He circled overhead, guardian angel in an ugly gray aircraft, until the Blackhawks arrived and lifted his team to safety. Only then did he turn for home, the Warthog's engines singing their distinctive song across the Hindu Kush. Behind him, smoke rose from the compound where evil men had plotted death. Now they were dust, and the world was a little bit safer. One shot at a time, one mission at a time, one brother saved at a time. That's all a warrior could do. And for Jake Morrison, sniper, pilot, and now something more, it was enough. 48 hours after the mission, Jake sat in the debriefing room, every muscle in his body screaming. The sprint down the mountain had torn both hamstrings, sprained his right ankle, and left him with bruises that painted his torso in shades of purple and black. The flight surgeon had ordered him on bed rest for a week. Jake had ignored him and shown up to the debrief anyway. Around the table sat Commander Cross and his SEAL team, bandaged, exhausted but alive. Chen's arm was in a sling from shrapnel wounds. Jensen walked with a cane, the through-and-through leg wound still healing. Cross had stitches above his right eye and looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. But they were smiling. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the intelligence officer, not to be confused with the wounded SEAL, stood at the projector clicking through after-action photos. Mission results: 3 high-value targets eliminated. Omar Ansari, Rashid Durrani, and Khalid Massoud, all confirmed KIA. 34 enemy combatants neutralized. Intelligence recovered includes 3 laptops, 2 cell phones, and documents detailing planned attacks across the region. Estimated American lives saved, potentially hundreds. She clicked to the next slide, aerial footage of the compound. The devastation was biblical: craters, collapsed buildings, scorched earth where the GAU-8 had spoken. Friendly casualties: 2 wounded, none critical, full recovery expected. Aircraft damage, minimal. Mission assessment, complete success. She turned to Jake. Captain Morrison, on behalf of the intelligence community, thank you. We've been hunting Ansari for 18 months. You ended that hunt in about 3 minutes of trigger time. Jake nodded, uncomfortable with the praise. The SEALs did the hard part. I just provided fire support. Cross barked a laugh. Fire support? Son, you executed a near-vertical gun run at danger-close range, flew close air support without a forward air controller, and made weapon employment decisions that would have gotten most pilots court-martialed for being too aggressive. He leaned forward. That wasn't fire support. That was a symphony of violence conducted by a master. Doc Williams spoke up, his massive frame filling his chair. Commander's underselling it. I watched from the overwatch position. What Hawkeye did was impossible. The angle, the speed, the precision. I've called in hundreds of airstrikes in my career. Never seen anything like that. You also made 6 consecutive sniper kills at extreme range before running down a mountain in 12 minutes, Jensen added. While injured. That's not just skill, Captain. That's warrior spirit. Jake felt his throat tighten. These men, these elite operators who represented the tip of the spear, were treating him as an equal, more than that, as one of them. Cross stood and the room fell silent. He reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a black Velcro patch. The SEAL trident gleamed in gold thread, but behind it, crossed, were a sniper rifle and an A-10 silhouette. Below, words were embroidered in silver. Any real snipers here? Captain Jacob Morrison, Cross said formally. This patch is unofficial, unauthorized, completely against regulations. His lips quirked. Which makes it perfect for you. You're a pilot who operates like a sniper who flies like a fighter pilot. You're Army-trained, Air Force employed, and SEAL approved. He extended the patch. You saved my team. You completed an impossible mission. You earned this. Jake stood, accepted the patch with both hands. The weight of it, cloth and thread, felt heavier than any metal, because this wasn't given by generals or politicians. This was given by warriors to a warrior, the only recognition that truly mattered. Thank you, Commander. I don't know what to say. Say you'll drink with us tonight, because we're getting very, very drunk and you're buying the first round. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Doc approached, hand extended. Welcome to the Brotherhood, Hawkeye. You need anything, anywhere, anytime, you call. We take care of our own. Same goes for all of us, Rodriguez added. You ever need a ground team, you know who to call. Jensen limped over, grinning despite his injured leg. And if you ever want to leave the Air Force, pretty sure we could get you a SEAL contract, with a waiver for the age requirement, and the swimming, and the running. Okay, you'd need a lot of waivers, but we'd make it happen. Jake laughed, a genuine, deep laugh that felt foreign after so many years of carrying grief. I'll stick with flying, thanks, but I appreciate the offer. The briefing ended, the team dispersing to medical appointments and much-needed rest. Jake lingered, staring at the patch in his hands. Cross approached quietly. You did good work out there, Captain, but I have to ask, did you get what you needed? Closure. Jake thought about Tommy Bryce. About 8 years, 4 months, and 13 days of guilt. About the weight that had pressed on his chest every morning when he woke up. Yeah, he said softly, I think I did. Tommy would have loved this mission. Would have loved seeing that gun run. He smiled. He always said I was wasted behind a rifle, said I should be in the air bringing the thunder. Smart man. The best. Then honor his memory by living, Captain, not just existing, actually living. Jake nodded. I will, Commander, starting tonight. That evening, Jake sat alone in his quarters before meeting the team for drinks. He opened his footlocker, pulled out a framed photo. Him and Tommy Bryce, desert fatigues, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning at the camera. Fallujah, 2009. A lifetime ago. He pinned the unofficial seal patch to the inside of his locker door, right next to the photo. We did it, brother, Jake whispered. Mission complete, all enemies eliminated, all brothers brought home alive. His voice cracked. I'm sorry it took me so long, sorry I couldn't save you, but I finished what we started. The photo didn't answer, didn't need to. Jake could almost hear Tommy's Kentucky drawl. Damn straight you did. Now quit being maudlin and go have a drink with your new friends. And Jake, I'm proud of you. Jake closed the locker, squared his shoulders, and headed for the door. Behind him, the patch gleamed in the dim light, a testament to what happens when a quiet man decides to stand up and be counted. Some warriors carry rifles, some fly aircraft. The best ones do whatever's necessary to protect their brothers. Jake Morrison had proven he was one of the best. 3 months later, Commander Cross would request Jake for another joint operation. Then another. Soon, the quiet A-10 pilot became the SEAL team's preferred close air support, the man they trusted when everything went sideways and impossible was the only option on the table. They called him Hawkeye, they called him brother, they called him when others couldn't get the job done. And every single time Jake answered, because that's what warriors do, they show up, they perform, they bring their brothers home,
Dipende, Zar, sai che va
no
in
matter what
banca.
it takes.
Allora, ricordo che il sabato quando andavo a scuola era una giornata abbastanza tranquilla. Era una giornata molto abbastanza rilassante, non mettevano mai niente di pesante, i professori avevano un po' meno voglia, però comunque erano pagati per farlo, quindi lo facevano. Poi ho avuto dei professori abbastanza di merda in realtà, quindi erano tutti